What if the monster sealed inside Naruto Uzumaki was not the nine tails? What if instead of Kurama, something far older, far cruel, far more intelligent was sealed inside him? A being that does not just raise, a being that plans, a being that does not want to destroy the world but to rule it. In this story, Naruto is not just a Jinchuruki, he is a vessel of Sukuna, the king of curses. From the moment he is born, the balance of the shinobi world begins to tilt. The Uchiha Massacre, the Akatsuki, the five great nations, all of them are no longer moving according to fate. They are moving according to his will. A Naruto who does not just grow stronger, a Naruto who grows dangerous. A Naruto does not just fight monster, but is slowly becoming the greatest monster of them all. This is the story of a world where Kurama never existed and Sukuna took his place. This is what if Sukuna replaced Kurama inside Naruto. If you are enjoying this dark and intense What If Naruto series and you want even more exclusive stories including unscored, mature and 18 plus Naruto What If content, then make sure you join to our Patreon. Patreon link is in the description. Join now and unlock the forbidden version of this story.
Darkness was not supposed to have weight, yet Naruto felt it pressing against him from every direction. Thick, heavy, suffocating. It wrapped around his body like a sealed coffin filled with warm liquid, squeezing his limbs until he could not tell where he ended and where the prison began. He could not move. He could not breathe. And yet he could think. That alone was wrong. Thoughts should not exist in a place like this. Am I dying? No, that didn't feel right either. Dying had a shape, a memory, a certainty. This was something else, something unfinished. His awareness flickered like a broken candle, unstable and trembling. The first sensation that returned to him was not pain, but contradiction. I shouldn't be here. That thought came with terrifying clarity. I shouldn't exist anymore. His mind reached for memories, and when it touched them, it recoiled. Then they came anyway. Not gently, not slowly. They crashed into him. Blood, screams, the sound of bone breaking under small hands that had been trained long before they should have been able to hold a weapon. He remembered being 3 years old. He remembered being taught how to hurt people before he was taught how to read. He remembered his father's fists, his father's voice, his father's cold approval. He remembered the first time someone stopped moving because of him, and he remembered that he hadn't cried. He had felt proud. You're strong, they told him. Strong people don't need excuses. Strong people don't need mercy. He had believed that. No, he had lived by that. He had grown into something that other people whispered about. A thing that walked like a man and laughed like a devil. Someone who did not just break enemies, but enjoyed watching them beg. A monster. His consciousness shuddered. Not because he regretted it, but because a part of him still remembered what it felt like to enjoy it. Then another memory surfaced. Her. A woman who looked at him like he was human. A small pair of arms that hugged his leg and called him Papa. He remembered warmth. He remembered something that hurt far more than any wound he had ever received. And he remembered the night it was taken away. Fire, blood, and an old man's shadow standing in the doorway. Rage surged through him like a tidal wave. I didn't get revenge. I didn't get justice. I didn't get anything. The pressure around his body tightened, as if the world itself was trying to crush the anger out of him. Then, something shifted. Presence. Not physical, not real, but undeniable. A cold, pale light unfolded inside his awareness. Not in front of his eyes, inside his mind. Status recognition complete. Designated vessel. Naruto Uzumaki. Condition. Pre-birth state. Soul integrity. Stable. Naruto froze. Naruto, That name echoed strangely inside him. It was not his old name, but somehow it felt right. More lines of light formed. Anomalous soul confirmed. Reincarnation process successful. Core adaptations granted. High-speed cognitive processing. Abnormal chakra compatibility. Special permissions locked. His thoughts raced. Reincarnation? He didn't need stories to understand that word. But the implications made his mind spin. So I died? And this is another world? Another life? Fragments of unfamiliar knowledge stirred at the edges of his awareness. Images of shinobi, chakra, villages, monsters sealed inside children. Naruto, Uzumaki, Konoha. This is that world. A world he had once only known as fiction. A world filled with gods pretending to be men and men pretending to be heroes. And he had been dropped into it. Inside a womb. Powerless. Trapped. But not empty. He could feel it. Something vast. Something violent. Something sleeping deep inside this tiny body. So that's how it is. He thought grimly. Another cage. But this time he wasn't going to rot in it. Slowly, carefully, he tested his thoughts. Even in this unborn state, his mind felt sharper than it should. Clearer. Faster. As if something had been adjusted. Whatever dragged me here, it didn't do it for nothing. The images of his lost family rose again. He crushed them down. Not because they didn't hurt, but because they hurt too much. This world has techniques that revive the dead, he remembered. Forbidden jutsu, soul jutsu, seals that defy nature. If even one of them worked, then maybe, no, not maybe, I will make them work. His resolve hardened into something cold and absolute. I don't care what this world demands. I don't care who stands in my way. If gods exist here, then I'll climb high enough to grab them by the throat. A strange sensation rippled through his consciousness. For just a moment, he felt something else. Something vast. Something ancient. Something that felt like a monstrous eye slowly opening in the dark. Presence. Watching. Waiting. And from somewhere deep, impossibly deep, he heard a distant, rumbling laugh. Naruto did not know it yet. But something inside him had already noticed that he was not supposed to remember his past life. And it was very, very interested in him. The thought lingered in his mind like a weight he could not put down. I'm sorry. He didn't know who he was apologizing to exactly. This unborn child whose body he now occupied or fate itself. But the guilt still existed. If I ever reach high enough, if I ever become something that can break the rules of time itself, I'll give this life back to you. It was a promise made to a shadow. Then his focus hardened. Sentiment won't keep me alive. Power will. He turned his attention inward again, toward that strange, artificial awareness that floated in the depths of his mind. Instead of words, this time it responded with impressions. Concepts. Structures. Blueprints of things that should not exist in a human body. One of them felt wrong. Not evil. Not exactly. More like something that had never been meant to belong to the world in the first place. Felt violent. Adaptive. Endlessly hungry for growth. When his mind brushed against it, information flooded him. Not as text but as understanding. He saw a body that could be reshaped like clay. Muscles that could be reinforced, multiplied, or restructured. A nervous system that could be optimized for combat. A mind that could dissect battle itself into patterns and solutions. He understood instinctively that this power was not a technique. It was a template, a way of existing, a way of becoming something that no longer fit the definition of human. So that's what this is. He thought slowly. A foundation for a monster. Then he turned to the second presence inside him. This one felt completely different. Cold, clear, endlessly vast. It did not push or pull, simply observed. When his awareness touched it, his thoughts accelerated. Not in a frantic way, in a terrifyingly efficient way. Connections formed instantly. Ideas stacked on top of each other. Possibilities branched, merged, and reorganized themselves before he could even consciously finish a thought. This isn't intelligence, he realized. This is optimization. It was as if his mind had been rebuilt into a machine whose only purpose was to understand. Naruto felt something dangerously close to awe. This is ridiculous, he thought. Not because it was weak, but because it was too much. A body that could be shaped into a weapon. A mind that could turn the world into a solvable problem. And all of it given to a newborn. Time passed, or maybe it didn't. It was impossible to tell in this place. The warmth around him pulsed steadily, like a distant heartbeat. And slowly, another sensation crept in. Something vast. Something heavy. Something angry. At first, it was only a pressure. Then it became a presence. Then it became a stare. Naruto felt it before he understood it. Deep, ancient, filled with hatred that had nothing to do with him, and yet somehow was now his problem. So that's here too, he thought grimly. The thing in the dark did not speak. It did not need to. Its existence alone was a warning. A caged god. A walking catastrophe. And apparently, a future roommate. Naruto exhaled slowly, at least he imagined he did. This world really doesn't do things halfway, does it? For the first time since waking up, something like excitement crept into his chest. Not joy, not hope, but the familiar thrill of standing at the edge of something terrible and enormous. Fine, he thought. If this world is built on monsters, then I'll just become a better one. The pressure around him suddenly shifted. The world squeezed, twisted, pulled. A violent force began dragging him forward. Voices echoed from far away. Light stabbed through the darkness. And Naruto realized, it's time. As his consciousness was yanked toward the surface, the ancient presence deep within him smiled. Understanding did not come all at once. Came in layers. At first, Naruto only felt overwhelmed, his thoughts moving too fast, too far, too deep. Then gradually he realized the reason. It wasn't just that he had gained something. It was that two entirely different legacies of knowledge had been forced to coexist inside his mind. One was brutal, instinctive, built on endless conflict and the refinement of destruction. The other was cold, methodical, built on observation, classification, and the endless pursuit of understanding. Together they formed something terrifying. Not wisdom, not madness, a tool. What surprised him wasn't the combat understanding or the methods of killing. It was something far more subtle. Souls. The second legacy, this vast, analytical intelligence, contained absurd amounts of data about the nature of consciousness, spiritual structures, and the relationship between body and essence across countless forms of life. The first had experienced souls. The second had mapped them. One knows how to cut them, Naruto realized. The other knows how they're built. That combination made his spine tingle. So that's the real cheat, he thought. His mind began to move not in hope, but in calculation. This world runs on inherited power. Bloodlines, reincarnations, seals, borrowed destinies. Naruto could feel it even now. Something old and vast coiled into the deepest part of this body. A fragment of history pretending to be fate. If I leave it alone, I'll just become another piece on someone else's board. He refused that. The idea formed slowly, then solidified. Instead of letting that power use me, I'll dismantle it. Not destroy, reclaim. If there's something sleeping inside me from a previous era, then I'll take it apart, understand it, and make it mine. That was step 1. Step 2 came naturally. This body is an Uzumaki, a bloodline known for vitality, longevity, absurd chakra reserves, and most importantly, compatibility with things that should kill other people. If I can restructure myself early enough, reinforce the foundation before it fully forms, he didn't need to finish the thought. With the knowledge he now carried, the concept of natural limits already felt negotiable. Then came the last, most dangerous piece. Something vast. Something furious. Something that even now was not here yet, but inevitably would be. A disaster given form. A God-shaped weapon. So that's the real prize, Naruto thought quietly. He did not delude himself. Taking that power would not be easy. It might not even be possible. But if he succeeded in reshaping the foundation first, then even that impossible chakra might become something his body could digest instead of merely contain. His focus shifted to the outside world. Minato, Kushina, names that felt strangely important, despite not being memories. If history plays out the same, they die, and he had already buried one family. I'm not doing that again. Even if saving them meant losing the easy path. Even if it meant the world changing. Even if it meant throwing the story itself off its rails. If they live, I lose the simplest version of that monster's power. His eyes, if he could be said to have them, hardened. Then I'll take it the hard way. Because some things were worth more than convenience. Because some mistakes were not meant to be repeated. I didn't save my first family, he thought. I'm not failing this one too. Slowly, carefully, he turned his awareness inward. Not to power, not to chakra, but to structure. To the place where identity, inheritance, and fate were tangled together. He did not try to change anything. Not yet. He only looked. Because for now, he was still too weak to interfere. But not too weak to plan. Not too weak to understand. And not too weak to prepare. Somewhere deep inside, something ancient shifted slightly, as if it had felt a gaze fall upon it. Naruto smiled. Found you. Naruto became aware of the space before he understood how he had entered it. There was no sensation of walking, no sense of arrival. One moment his awareness was folded inward. The next, he was standing. The ground beneath his feet was not earth, not stone, not anything that belonged to the living world. It was something smooth and reflective like dark glass. Yet when he looked closely, he realized it was not reflecting light. It was reflecting memory. Shapes lay scattered everywhere. Broken silhouettes, distorted impressions, half-formed shadows that felt heavy just to look at. They were not corpses. They were imprints, traces left behind by things that had ended. Naruto's gaze lowered. A dark red sheen covered the surface beneath him, thin like mist, thick like guilt. He did not smell blood. He felt it. It clung to his senses like a second skin. Slowly, he noticed something else. His perspective felt wrong. Higher, broader. He lifted his hands. They were not the small hands of an unborn child. They were adult, strong, too strong. When he looked down, his reflection did not show the face he remembered from either life. It was a stranger, sharp eyes, a cruel calm, a presence that felt like violence given shape. So this is how it manifests, he murmured. Not fear, not surprise, just observation. That influence isn't passive. It's rewriting how this place represents me. He turned and saw it. A structure stood in the distance, not built but asserted into existence. It was not a building. It was a symbol, a place that existed because something inside him demanded a throne. The air around it felt heavier, denser, as if reality itself was being pressed into a more obedient shape. Naruto did not approach it. Not yet. I didn't come here to admire the decor. He closed his eyes and listened, not with ears, with something deeper. At first, there was only silence. Then, a rhythm, faint, distant, like a heartbeat that did not belong to him. He followed it, not by walking but by aligning. The world shifted. The scenery peeled away like a discarded layer of paint. And he saw it. A fragment. Presence. Not conscious. Not resisting. Just existing. It was small. Dim. Almost pitiful. A remnant of something that had once been enormous. So this is what's left of you, Naruto thought. He had expected a trial. A struggle. A battle of wills across ages. Instead, he found a relic. A will that had already burned itself out and left only an echo behind. For a moment he felt disappointed. Then he felt something else. Pity. Not for that presence, but for what it represented. A man who couldn't finish what he started. A power that couldn't move forward. A legacy that could only cling to descendants and call it purpose. Naruto was silent for a long time. Then a memory surfaced. A voice. Cold. Certain. The world is full of weak things. If you want to matter, you have to be something that breaks them. He looked at his hands again. I really did become what he wanted, he said quietly. He hated that. And he hated that it was true. But hatred did not change reality. Only action did. If I'm going to carry sins, Naruto said, his voice steady, then at least they'll be mine. He stepped closer to the fragment. The presence did not react, did not resist, did not even seem aware. I won't end up like you, Naruto said, clinging to the future because I couldn't handle the present. He reached out. The moment his awareness touched it, the space trembled. Not violently, not yet, but with a sense of something ancient being reassigned. There was no pain, no scream, no struggle, just absorption, integration, understanding. The fragment unraveled, not destroyed, repurposed. Naruto felt it settle deeper into him. Not as a voice, not as a will, but as fuel, as foundation, as raw material. He stood still as the inner world slowly stabilized. Then he exhaled. That's one. He turned his gaze inward, deeper than this place, deeper than this layer of self. Somewhere far below, something enormous slept, something furious, something that would not be so easy. Naruto's lips curved slightly, not into a smile, into something sharper. I'll come for you later. The world around him began to fade. As his consciousness withdrew, one final thought surfaced. If becoming a monster is the price, then I'll just make sure I'm the kind that finishes the job. The shift did not come with thunder. Came with weight. Naruto felt it settle into every layer of his being, into the shape of his chakra, into the structure of his body, into something even deeper that did not yet have a name. His awareness snapped back into his developing body. And for the first time, he could feel it. Not the dull, formless energy he had known before. This was different, dense, alive, heavy with potential. He flexed, such as an unborn body could flex, and felt resistance bend around him. This worked. The realization hit him like a surge of cold fire. It actually worked. If he had lungs, he would have laughed. If he had a mouth, he would have screamed. Instead, his mind burned with something close to triumph. That presence is gone. Not sealed. Not dormant. Gone. And in its place, something his. He focused inward. On the flow. On the circulation. On the texture of his own chakra. It no longer felt thin or wild. Felt rooted. Enduring. As if it carried the stubborn, relentless will of something that refused to die easily. So this is what it means to have this bloodline fully. But curiosity quickly turned into ambition. Now for the real problem. Deeper. Far deeper. Beyond the layers he had just changed, there was something else. Something vast. Something that leaked its presence even while sleeping. Poison. A storm. A caged calamity. And right now, tiny threads of that power were seeping through the seal and into Kushina's body. Naruto felt it, not as an observer, but as part of the system. That chakra is eating away at her from the inside. Without hesitation, he reached. Not physically, with intent. He adjusted the flow, bent it, redirected it. The leaking chakra shifted course. Instead of spreading into Kushina's coils, it was drawn inward, toward him. The first contact felt like swallowing fire. Not painful, but violent, aggressive. The energy did not want to be contained. It wanted to devour. Naruto did not stop. He refined, filtered, broke it down and forced it through the framework he had just rebuilt. So this is what you taste like, he thought. Rough, angry, but usable. He took a little more, then a little more, and then Kushina's body shuddered. Outside, she stumbled. Her breath caught. Her knees hit the floor. The seal flared. Pain shot through her like a blade. What? She gasped, clutching her stomach. Inside, Naruto froze. Too much. He felt it instantly. He had pulled too hard. The system destabilized. Without thinking, he reacted. He reversed the flow, not just stopped it. He compensated. He pushed stabilized chakra back through the same pathways, guided, refined, gentle. Not forcing, not overwhelming, supporting. Kushina's breath hitched, then slowly, steadied. The pain faded. The violent pressure receded into something manageable. She stayed on her knees, trembling, sweat running down her face. But the agony was gone. Naruto, she whispered, one hand resting over her belly. Her voice was shaking, but alive. Inside, Naruto finally let himself slow down. That was close. The seal still pulsed. But now it was only warning, not collapse. He carefully reduced his intake, adjusted the balance, returned everything to a stable cycle. I can't be greedy yet, he told himself. Not until this body can handle it properly. He withdrew his focus, but not his attention, because now he understood something important. I can interact with the seal, and I can affect her condition, which meant this wasn't just about survival. This was about control. Outside, Kushina slowly pushed herself back up, still breathing hard. Her hand never left her stomach. You scared me, you know that? She murmured softly. Inside, Naruto was silent. Not because he didn't care, but because for the first time, he truly understood how dangerous the road ahead was, and how thin the line was between getting stronger and killing the person he was trying to protect. Deep, deep below, something vast stirred in its sleep, as if it had noticed that something had just taken a bite out of it. The evening light painted the Namikaze's home in soft gold and long shadows. Minato stood near the window, arms folded, staring outside without really seeing anything. Dark circles sat beneath his eyes, evidence of a Hokage who had not truly rested in days. Behind him, Kushina sat on the couch, one hand on her stomach, the other gripping the fabric of her dress. She looked better than she had the day before. That alone made Minato uneasy. Jiraiya broke the silence by letting out a low whistle. You look like you fought a war with paperwork and lost. Minato gave a thin smile. That obvious? You've got that. I solved 20 problems and gained 30 new ones face. Kushina snorted weakly, then turned serious again. Jiraiya, it happened again today. Not as bad as yesterday, but I felt the seal shift. Jiraiya's expression sharpened instantly. Shift how? Like something inside is pulling, she said, searching for the words. And then it settles. And after that I feel stronger, less tired. But the seal itself feels thinner. Minato's jaw tightened. It's not supposed to do that. No, Jiraiya agreed. It's not. He knelt in front of Kushina and placed 2 fingers lightly near the edge of the seal area. Not touching, just close enough to feel the chakra flow. For a few seconds, he said nothing. Then his brows furrowed. That's not leakage, he muttered. That's redirection. Kushina blinked. Redirection. Something is pulling the Nine-Tails chakra before it spreads into your coils. Minato's eyes widened. Naruto. Jiraiya didn't answer immediately. Instead, he straightened. This isn't something I can check properly in my normal state. He clapped his hands together. I'll need better sensitivity. A moment later, 2 small puffs of smoke appeared. Oi! Oi! You couldn't even let us finish dinner? Fukasaku grumbled. Shima adjusted her shawl and peered around. What's all this urgency? Jiraiya quickly explained the situation. Both elder toads sobered immediately. This is not a normal pregnancy complication, Shima said flatly. No, Fukasaku agreed. If the Nine-Tails chakra is being interfered with, we should look at this carefully. They hopped onto Jiraiya's shoulders. A few minutes later, his posture changed. His chakra steadied. His presence deepened. When he opened his eyes again, the world looked clearer. He focused, not just on Kushina, but inside her. He was silent for a long time. Then, this is insane, he said quietly. Minato leaned forward. What do you see? Jiraiya exhaled slowly. The Nine-Tails chakra is still poisonous to her body. That hasn't changed. Kushina tensed. But, Jiraiya continued, that damage is being repaired almost instantly. Not by the seal. He looked at her stomach. By the kid. The room went still. Naruto is constantly sending stabilized chakra back into your system, Jiraiya said. Not in bursts. Not unconsciously. Continuously. Minato felt his chest tighten. So he's the one weakening the seal? And also the one keeping Kushina healthy? Yes. Kushina stared down at her belly. Then slowly, a stunned smile appeared. He's helping me? Jiraiya nodded. Whether he means to or not. But that doesn't make sense, Minato said. He hasn't even been born yet. That's the problem, Jiraiya replied. This isn't reflex. This is control. The word hung heavily in the air. Could it be an Uzumaki trait? Kushina asked. Jiraiya hesitated. Uzumaki vitality explains the effect. He looked serious. It doesn't explain the precision. Minato closed his eyes briefly. Is Naruto in danger? Jiraiya shook his head slowly. Not that I can tell. If anything, he looked almost disturbed. His chakra system is adapting to the Nine-Tails presence instead of being overwhelmed by it. Kushina let out a small, breathless laugh. That's my son. Minato didn't laugh. He couldn't. Jiraiya, he said quietly. Is this safe? Jiraiya did not answer immediately. Right now? Yes, he said. Long term. He looked at Kushina's stomach again. I have no idea what kind of existence this kid is going to grow into. Kushina hugged her belly gently. Whatever he is, he's trying to protect me. Jiraiya's gaze hardened slightly. Or he's learning how to control something that even most adults can't, he thought. Either way, Konoha had just gained something that didn't fit into any category he liked. Not a weapon. Not a prodigy. Not even a Jinchuriki. Something else. Something new. And deep, deep inside the seal, something vast shifted again. Not in pain. Not in rage. But in attention. As if it had finally realized that the thing growing inside this woman was not just a cage. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of examinations, seals, consultations, and quiet arguments whispered late at night. Nothing changed. Every medicine they spoke to gave them the same answer. No one was willing to touch a pregnancy this unusual. Not when the mother was a Jinchuriki. Not when the child was already influencing the seal. Not when a single mistake could turn a complicated situation into a catastrophe. So Minato and Kushina walked. They walked through Konoha's streets in the late afternoon, surrounded by the noise of normal life. Children laughing, merchants calling out, shinobi moving from mission to mission, and yet neither of them could relax. Kushina's hand rested on her stomach. Minato's never strayed far from her. "We'll find a solution," Minato said quietly, more to himself than to her. Kushina tried to smile. "You always say that. And I'm usually right." "Usually?" she echoed with a tired chuckle. They were halfway to another old contact, someone who might have seen something similar decades ago, when Kushina suddenly stopped. Not because of pain, not because of fatigue, because something scraped against her senses. Her body tensed before her mind could explain why. Her grip on Minato's sleeve tightened. "Minato," she said slowly. He felt it immediately, the change in her breathing, the sudden tension in her chakra. "What is it?" "I don't know," she replied. "But something feels wrong." She looked around. At first, she saw nothing but villagers. Then, her eyes caught on a shape that didn't quite belong. A figure standing too still, too quiet, half hidden between two buildings. It wasn't the way he looked. It was the way he felt, like a smudge on reality. Minato followed her gaze, but saw only ordinary movement, ordinary people. "I don't sense anything," he said. But his hand was already moving toward her back, protective. The figure shifted, just a little, and for the briefest moment, Kushina felt a wave of emotion that wasn't hers. Cold, empty, ancient. Her skin prickled. "That one," she said softly. Minato focused. This time he saw it. Not clearly, but enough. A wrongness in the crowd. He took a step forward. The figure reacted instantly, not running, not panicking, just vanishing into the flow of people like it had never been there. Minato's eyes narrowed. "Stay with me," he said quietly. They abandoned their errand and went home. That night, Kushina couldn't sit still. She paced, one hand always on her stomach. "That wasn't normal," she said. "I've been watched before. I know the feeling. But that thing." Minato nodded slowly. "I'll have the ANBU look into unusual activity around the village. And around you." He hesitated. "You shouldn't be able to sense someone hiding that well." Kushina looked down at her belly. "Maybe I'm not the only one changing. Far away, in places where light did not matter." The being that had been watching slipped through the earth like a bad memory. His thoughts were unsettled. She noticed. That wasn't supposed to happen. Not yet. It found the masked man and reported what it had seen. Obito listened in silence. Then his visible eye narrowed. "So she's developing that level of perception already. Watching her directly will be risky now," the creature said. "She can feel me." Obito was quiet for a long moment. "Then we don't watch her." He turned slightly. "We watch everything else." "The plan for the birth?" the creature asked. Obito shook his head. "Too dangerous now. If she's this sensitive, she'll notice something before we're ready." He looked toward the distance. "We'll wait, and we'll adjust." The creature sank back into the shadows, uneasy. And in Konoha, under warm lamps and peaceful skies, no one noticed how close the village had just come to disaster. Except, perhaps, something still unborn. Something that had already started to notice when the world was looking at it. Time did not make the problem smaller. It only made it heavier. Days slipped by, one after another, filled with examinations that led nowhere and conversations that ended the same way. We can't risk it. Every specialist Minato consulted reached the same conclusion. Naruto's condition was unprecedented, and any attempt to interfere directly could cause damage that no one knew how to fix. So they waited, and waiting, Minato learned, was its own kind of torture. Kushina spent more and more time near the windows, watching the village like she expected something to step out of the crowd at any moment. One hand was always on her stomach. Sometimes she didn't even realize she was doing it. The memory of that presence, the thing that had been watching, never truly left her. Minato noticed. He just didn't know how to make it go away. One evening, as the house settled into quiet, he sat beside her and gently pulled her closer. "We'll get through this," he said, not as the Hokage, not as a strategist, just as her husband. Naruto is tougher than he looks. He's already proving that. Kushina let out a small, tired laugh and rested her head against his shoulder. "He gets that from you too, you know? Let's hope he gets more of you than me," Minato replied softly. She closed her eyes. "For his sake, I hope so too." But neither of them truly slept that night. A few days later, Minato sat in his office, staring at reports he wasn't really reading. Jiraiya was across from him, unusually quiet, arms crossed. Hiruzen stood near the window, his old eyes thoughtful as he looked out over Konoha. "We're out of safe options," Minato said at last. "Every medic nin in the village who's qualified to even look at Kushina has already given their opinion. And all of them are scared," Jiraiya added. "Rightfully so," Hiruzen said. "This situation isn't just rare. It's wrong." Minato exhaled slowly. "Then there's only one person left who might be able to handle something like this." Jiraiya's expression tightened. "You mean her?" Hiruzen didn't need to ask who. "Tsunade," Minato said. "If anyone in this world understands both medical ninjutsu and impossible cases, it's her." Jiraiya rubbed the back of his neck. "Finding her is easy. Convincing her to come back is the real problem." Hiruzen turned from the window. "She still avoids the village?" "She avoids responsibility," Jiraiya corrected. "And debt collectors. Mostly debt collectors." Minato looked at him. "Can you bring her back?" Jiraiya was silent for a moment. "Maybe," he said, "but not with words." He glanced at Hiruzen. "She's in deep, deeper than usual. If the village is willing to clean up her mess, that might get her attention." Hiruzen sighed. "That woman has always been expensive. But she's also irreplaceable," Minato said firmly. The third Hokage studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll handle the council." Jiraiya's mouth twitched. "Guess that makes this my job." He stood up and stretched. "You two keep things stable here. I'll go drag our prodigal Sannin back." Minato looked relieved, but only slightly. "Be careful," he said. "And hurry." Jiraiya paused at the door. "Don't worry," he said. "If there's even a chance she can help that kid, I'll find her." And with that, he was gone. That night, far beneath Konoha's peaceful surface, something vast shifted in its cage. And somewhere else, something else adjusted its plans. And neither Minato nor Kushina knew how little time they actually had left. The road was dusty. The sun was cruel. And Tsunade Senju looked like a woman who had lost a long personal war against both. Her Haori was wrinkled, Her hair was a mess, and her expression suggested she was one bad minute away from either punching someone or passing out in the dirt. Shizun, walking beside her, looked only slightly better, though she at least still had the dignity to look miserable instead of feral. They hadn't eaten properly in 2 days. They hadn't slept properly in 3. And they hadn't paid a single debt in, well, Shizun had stopped counting. Tsunade took one last, heroic sip from a nearly empty bottle and sighed. All right, new plan. Shizun stiffened. I don't like the way you said that. We find a rich-looking house, Tsunade said, pointing vaguely toward a distant town. We go inside. We take things. We leave. Shizun stared. You're describing theft. I prefer the term emergency redistribution. Tsunade-sama. Tsunade waved her off. Relax. I'm a ninja. No one will see me. And even if they do, they'll just assume they're hallucinating. Oh look. The legendary Tsunade is robbing my house. See? Sounds ridiculous. Shizun pinched the bridge of her nose. Your reputation doesn't buy food, Tsunade interrupted. She dropped onto a rock and stared at the horizon. I'm ruined, Shizun. Properly ruined. The kind of ruined that doesn't get fixed by winning one big bet. That's because you never stop at one bet. Tsunade ignored her. There isn't a single person left who could cover what I owe, she muttered. Not even if they wanted to. She paused, then brightened a little. Do you think it's possible to summon my grandfather's spirit and ask where he hid his money? Shizun's eye twitched. No. What about my uncle? No. What about? No. Tsunade slumped. Figures. She stared up at the sky. Some people are born under lucky stars. Some people are born under cursed ones. She sighed deeply. I think mine is actively laughing at me. Shizun was about to say something when a familiar, irritating voice spoke from behind them. You know, if you're going to spiral into despair, at least do it somewhere with better scenery. Both of them turned. Jiraiya stood there, hands in his pockets, looking far too pleased with himself. Tsunade's expression darkened instantly. You. Me, he confirmed cheerfully. What do you want, Jiraiya? He glanced at their state. The dust, the bottle, the general air of financial apocalypse. Honestly, I came to check if you were still alive. Shizun bowed slightly. Jiraiya-sama. Tsunade snorted. If you're here to laugh, get it over with. Jiraiya smiled. Actually, I'm here to make you an offer. Her eyes narrowed. I don't like offers. Oh, you will, he said calmly. Because this one comes with money. She froze. How much? Enough to make your debt collectors forget your name. Her breath hitched. Then she scoffed. You're lying. Probably, Jiraiya admitted. But in this case, I'm not. Tsunade stared at him. What's the catch? Jiraiya's expression shifted. Just a little. There's a woman in Konoha, he said, and a child who hasn't been born yet. Shizun's eyes widened slightly. Kushina Uzumaki is pregnant, Jiraiya continued, and the situation is complicated. Tsunade's gaze sharpened. How complicated? Nine Tails complicated. Silence. Then Tsunade stood up. All traces of drunkenness vanished from her posture. Talk, she said. Jiraiya did. He explained the seal, the abnormalities, the child affecting chakra flow before even being born, and how no one in Konoha could safely handle it. They need the best medical nin in the world, he finished. He looked straight at her. They need you. Tsunade was quiet for a long moment. And in exchange? The village covers everything, Jiraiya said. All of it. Shizun looked at Tsunade hopefully. Tsunade looked away. I don't go back to Konoha, Jiraiya's voice softened. This isn't about the village. He paused. It's about a child who might not survive without you. Tsunade clenched her fists. Then slowly, she exhaled. You're an awful man, Jiraiya. He grinned. I know. She took one last look at the empty road behind her, then turned toward the path that led home. Fine, she said. But if this kid dies, I'm haunting you. Far away, in Konoha, something ancient shifted in its cage, and something else still unborn, prepared to meet the woman who could either save everything or make things far more complicated. Tsunade washed her hands slowly in the basin, her expression far more serious than when she had arrived. This isn't something I can fix in the normal sense, she said at last, because nothing here is broken, not in the way people usually mean. Minato frowned. That doesn't make me feel better. It shouldn't, Tsunade replied bluntly. It should make you cautious. She turned back to Kushina. Your son isn't just compensating for the Nine-Tails influence. He's managing it, regulating it, filtering it, and he's doing it with a level of control that shouldn't exist in someone who hasn't even been born yet. Kushina swallowed. So, what do we do? Tsunade crossed her arms. We observe. We don't interfere unless something goes wrong. And we do not let anyone else touch the seal or this pregnancy. Her gaze sharpened. Not the council. Not the elders. Not even other medics. Minato understood immediately. Because if word gets out, you'll have every power-hungry idiot in the elemental nations looking at your child like a miracle pill. Tsunade finished. Kushina hugged her belly protectively. Tsunade's voice softened slightly. Right now he's stable. More than stable. In fact, she hesitated. His system is adapting at a frightening speed. Minato's eyes narrowed. Frightening. Tsunade nodded. This kind of adaptation usually comes with side effects. Instability, cellular collapse, rejection. She looked at Kushina again. He has none of that. The room grew quiet. It's like his body expects impossible conditions, Tsunade said, and simply prepares for them. Kushina let out a small, breathless laugh. That sounds like Minato. Minato smiled faintly, then looked thoughtful. Can you stay? He asked. At least until the birth. Tsunade didn't answer immediately. Then she sighed. I wasn't planning on leaving. That night, after Tsunade had gone to prepare a more detailed monitoring setup, and Kushina had finally fallen asleep, Minato stood alone by the window. He looked out over the village, and felt something he couldn't explain. Not danger, not fear, just a sense of being watched. Inside Kushina's mindscape, deep behind layers of seals and barriers, something vast shifted. Not violently, not angrily, but uneasily. For the first time in decades, the Nine-Tails felt something touching its power that was not a seal, not a jailer, not a suppressor, but a consumer, and deeper still, in a place no one else could see. Naruto's consciousness quietly observed the changes in his own body. Tsunade Senju, he thought. So that's the world's greatest medic. He analyzed everything she had done. Every pulse of chakra. Every probe. Every reaction. Good. She didn't notice the important parts. His attention shifted inward. Toward the seal. Toward the ocean of power sleeping inside it. Not yet, he told himself. Soon. And somewhere far away, a masked man paused, and felt a strange, inexplicable chill run down his spine, as if something had just looked back at him. Naruto did not voice those thoughts. He rarely did. Instead, he looked at the broken targets scattered around the clearing and flicked another kunai into the air, catching it by the handle. A celebration with foreign guests, he said calmly. That means security will be a nightmare. Minato blinked, then laughed softly. You sound more like an ANBU captain than a 5-year-old. Naruto shrugged. It's just logic. Minato watched him for a moment, really watched him. The way he stood, the way his eyes tracked movement in the forest even when he was supposedly relaxed. The way his chakra sat unnaturally still, like a coiled spring instead of a child's untrained flow. Sometimes, Minato forgot that Naruto was supposed to be a child. We're taking precautions, Minato said. The barrier team will be doubled. ANBU will be everywhere. And your mother has been very vocal about her own security suggestions. Naruto's lips twitched faintly. I can imagine. Kushina's idea of security usually involved overwhelming force and very little subtlety. Do I have a choice? Naruto asked after a short pause. Minato hesitated. About the celebration? Naruto nodded. Minato's expression softened. Not really. The daimyo already approved it. The invitations are already being sent. I see. There was no anger in Naruto's voice, just acceptance. Minato felt something twist in his chest. He wanted to tell his son that this wasn't just politics, that people really did admire him, that he really was something special. But Naruto already knew that, and that was the problem. You don't have to stay on stage the whole time, Minato said. Once the formal parts are over, you can disappear if you want. Naruto looked at him. Disappear? Minato smiled slightly. I was your age once too, you know? Naruto studied his father for a second, then nodded. Thank you. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Naruto spoke again. Dad, why do people look at me the way they do? Minato froze. What way? Like I'm not just a person, Naruto said. Like I'm a project. Or a banner. Minato's hands clenched slowly. Because people are afraid of losing hope again, he said carefully. And they're afraid of losing power. And sometimes, they mix those two things up. Naruto absorbed that. So I'm useful. Minato turned sharply. Naruto. It's fine, Naruto said calmly. I understand. And that somehow hurt more. Minato opened his mouth to say something else. Then the air changed. Not violently, not obviously, just wrong. Naruto felt it first. His eyes sharpened, and his gaze flicked toward the deeper part of the forest. Minato noticed a fraction of a second later. Did you sense that? Minato asked quietly. Naruto nodded. Something moved, Naruto said. Far away, but watching. Minato's chakra flared subtly. Probably just a patrol. Naruto didn't look convinced. Neither was Minato. That night, Naruto sat alone in his room. He stared at the ceiling. 5 years old, he thought, in this world, and far older than that in another. He closed his eyes and let his awareness sink inward, past his own chakra, past the layers of his altered body, toward the seal, toward the vast presence sleeping inside. Kurama was quiet, but not as quiet as before. He's starting to notice, Naruto thought. Good. Everything was moving. The village, the plans, the pieces, and somewhere, far from Konoha, a masked man studied a map and tapped his finger on a single date. June 10th. Naruto opened his eyes and smiled faintly. So that's when it happens. That sounds nice, Naruto said after a moment. His voice was calm, polite. But honestly, Dad, I'd rather keep training. There's still too much I don't know. Minato smiled, though something in his chest tightened. He admired that focus, he truly did, but part of him wished his son would sometimes act like a child instead of a seasoned shinobi. Training will always be there, he said gently. Sometimes it's good to step away from it. You might even enjoy yourself. Naruto nodded, even though his thoughts were already drifting elsewhere. Enjoy myself. The words felt distant. As Minato turned to leave, Naruto watched him go, feeling a faint, uncomfortable pressure in his chest. He knew his father cared. He knew both Minato and Kushina wanted him to be happy. But the gap between them wasn't something affection alone could close. Thanks, Dad, Naruto said, forcing his expression into something that passed for a smile. I'll try. Minato paused, then reached out and ruffled his hair, just like he used to when Naruto was smaller. No matter what happens, he said softly, we're proud of you. Then he was gone. The forest felt quieter after that. Naruto turned back to his training device and threw another kunai. It cut cleanly through the air and shattered a moving target. He didn't feel satisfied. This isn't enough. Not because it was too easy, but because it was too small. He retrieved another blade, his eyes distant. They see a genius, a symbol, the Hokage's son. They don't see the rest. And he intended to keep it that way. The idea had been growing in his mind for months now. A second face, a second name, a way to move in the world without every eye tracking his shadow. I've already shown them what I want them to see, he thought. Nothing more. The deeper parts of his power, his true advantages, would remain buried, hidden, saved for when they were actually needed. He focused inward for a brief moment, feeling the different currents of power that made up his existence now. They no longer felt foreign. They felt arranged, like tools laid out on a table, waiting to be chosen. One of these will be perfect for building a new self, he thought. A self that could move freely. A self that could do what Naruto Namake's never could. For now, though, he returned to training. Another kunai. Another perfect hit. The forest echoed softly with the sound of splitting wood and falling debris. Naruto's eyes were calm, but his mind was already far ahead. It's time, he thought. Time to stop just preparing and start moving the pieces. Far away, in a place where light rarely reached, a masked man studied his plans. And in a cage made of seals and hatred, something enormous slowly began to stir. Kushina finished adjusting the final fold of his robes and rested her hands lightly on his shoulders. You look very handsome, she said with a soft smile. Naruto nodded. You too. She laughed quietly. Flattery already? You really are Minato's son. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was heavy, filled with things neither of them knew how to say. Kushina reached out and pulled him into a hug. Naruto stiffened for a fraction of a second, then slowly, carefully returned it. Her arms were warm, steady, real. For a brief moment, something in his chest tightened painfully. This is dangerous, he thought. Not because of weakness, but because of attachment. I know I'm not always good at this, Kushina said quietly, her chin resting lightly against his head. But I really am proud of you, Naruto. He didn't answer right away. I know, he said at last. She pulled back and smiled at him again, then stood. Come on. Your father is probably already worrying about security and schedules and 100 other things. Naruto followed her out into the hallway. The house was unusually busy. Servants moved back and forth. NBU shadows flickered across rooftops outside. Even without trying, Naruto could feel the density of chakra in the air around the compound. They're nervous, he noted. Good. They should be. In the living room, Minato was already dressed in formal Hokage robes, speaking quietly with Tsunade. I still don't like this, Minato was saying. Tsunade crossed her arms. Neither do I. But there's nothing medically unstable about him right now. And the village has already committed to this farce. Minato sighed. I just wish we could postpone it. Tsunade's eyes flicked to Naruto as he entered. He's not fragile, Minato. Then she paused. He's just not normal. Naruto met her gaze calmly. She held it for a second longer than necessary, then looked away. We'll have medics nearby, Tsunade continued. And I'll be close. If anything feels wrong, we shut it down immediately. Minato nodded, though the tension in his shoulders didn't ease. Naruto, Minato said, kneeling slightly to be at eye level. If at any point you feel tired, overwhelmed, or uncomfortable, you tell me. We'll leave. No explanations needed. Naruto nodded. Understood. Minato smiled faintly. Try to have fun, all right? Naruto did not promise. The village was already transforming by the time they arrived. Banners, stalls, guests from distant lands, shinobi from other villages walking in carefully measured groups. The air was filled with polite smiles and hidden calculations. Naruto could feel it. So many eyes, so much attention, so many people measuring him like a weapon on display. This is a political stage, he thought, not a birthday party. He walked beside his parents, his posture calm, his expression neutral. Perfect. Controlled. Tsunade stayed close. So did several ANBU, though they pretended to be nothing more than part of the crowd. As they approached the central area, Naruto felt something, a faint, unpleasant pressure. Not chakra, not killing intent. Something subtler, like being observed through too many layers of glass. His eyes shifted slightly, scanning the crowd. Nothing obvious, but the feeling did not go away. Interesting, he thought. Far away, in a place hidden from ordinary perception. A masked man adjusted the position of a single piece on his mental board. Not today, he murmured. But soon. Back in Konoha, the celebration began. Speeches, formalities, smiles, applause. Naruto stood where he was told to stand, moved when he was told to move, spoke when he was told to speak. He played his role perfectly, but inside, he was counting, timing, observing. Everything is too tight, he thought, too careful, which means everyone expects something to go wrong. His awareness brushed briefly against the seal deep inside him. Kurama was restless, not raging, just uneasy. You feel it too, Naruto thought. The fox did not answer, but its chakra shifted slightly. As the sun began to lower and the formal part of the celebration finally started to loosen, Naruto felt it. A change, not in the crowd, not in the chakra around him, but in the structure of the moment itself. Like the world was taking a breath, and somewhere, something else, was preparing to exhale. Naruto's eyes sharpened. So he thought, this is the day the board finally starts moving. Naruto stepped into the hallway, the door sliding shut softly behind him. For a brief moment he paused, not because of nerves, but because he wanted to remember this. The quiet, the warmth, the way the house felt before everything changed. This is what I'm protecting, he thought. Then he moved. Outside, the compound was alive with motion. ANBU shifted between rooftops. Servants hurried with last-minute preparations. Shinobi from various departments moved with disciplined precision, their eyes constantly scanning. The security was tight, too tight. Naruto could feel it. The village itself felt like a drawn bowstring. Tsunade was waiting near the entrance, arms crossed, eyes sharp. You ready? She asked. As ready as necessary, Naruto replied. She studied him for a second, then snorted. You really don't talk like a kid. No, he said calmly. I don't. For some reason, she didn't push it. They walked together toward the main streets. The closer they got to the central plaza, the denser the chakra became. Foreign shinobi, bodyguards, envoys, hidden observers. Naruto's senses quietly mapped everything. Too many important people in one place, he thought. If something happens, it'll be catastrophic. Good. That meant whoever was planning something would aim big. Minato and Kushina joined them near the edge of the main square. Minato was already in full Hokage mode. Calm, controlled, but Naruto could feel the tension beneath it. "You stay between us," Minato said quietly. "And if anything feels even slightly wrong, we leave immediately." Naruto nodded. Understood. The ceremony began. Speeches, formal greetings, carefully chosen words. Naruto stood where he was told, bowed when he was told, smiled when he was told. To everyone watching, he was the perfect symbol. Inside, he was counting exits, watching shadows, tracking chakra signatures. Nothing obvious yet, he thought. But the feeling from earlier, it didn't go away. If anything, it got worse. Not stronger. Closer. Kurama shifted uneasily inside the seal. Not violently, not angrily, just alert. "So you feel it too," Naruto noted. He did not try to communicate. He didn't need to. The unease was mutual. As the sun climbed higher, the formal part of the event finally began to loosen. Music started. People began to mingle. Security relaxed. Just a little. And that was when Naruto felt it. A disturbance. Not chakra. Not killing intent. Something else. Something like a hole in the world. His eyes moved instantly. There. For less than a second. A space where the crowd's presence didn't quite line up. Then it was gone. Naruto's heart rate didn't change. But his mind sharpened. "So you finally decided to show up." He did not alert anyone. Not yet. Instead, he subtly adjusted his position, half a step closer to Kushina. Minato noticed. "Naruto." "Nothing," Naruto said quietly. "Just staying where you told me." Minato nodded, though his eyes narrowed slightly. Far away. In a place that was not a place. A masked man observed the scene through methods no normal shinobi could perceive. "Interesting," he murmured. Back in the Namikaze household, now empty and quiet, sunlight streamed through the windows. The house looked peaceful, normal, as if nothing in the world could touch it. And that was the last moment of true calm Konoha would have for a very long time. Naruto looked up at the sky. The clouds were moving slowly. Good, he thought. That means there's still time. But not much. Naruto let his gaze drift back to the crowd. Smiles. Laughter. Carefully rehearsed diplomacy. To everyone else, it looked like a festival. To him, it looked like a battlefield waiting for the first move. He reached inward for a brief moment. Not to draw power. Just to listen. Deep behind the layers of seals and suppression, something vast stirred again. Kurama's presence was not raging. Not yet. But it was no longer merely uneasy. It was focused, like a predator that had just noticed another predator enter its territory. "You feel it too," Naruto thought again. This time, the response was not a shift of chakra. It was something closer to a pressure. A warning. Naruto exhaled slowly. Around them, the barrier teams maintained their positions. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. His eyes flicked to Minato's back. To Kushina's side. If he's here, he's not here for show, Naruto thought. He's waiting for a specific moment. And then, somewhere far above the village, something twitched in the air. Not visibly. Not to normal senses. But to Naruto, it felt like a thread had just been plucked. His pupils shrank. The barrier, he realized. Someone just touched the barrier. Minato stiffened at the exact same moment. He didn't turn, didn't speak, but his chakra shifted sharp, alert, ready. Tsunade's eyes narrowed. ANBU on the rooftops subtly changed positions. The music kept playing. The crowd kept talking. The celebration kept going. But the village had just gone on silent alert. Naruto's gaze lifted slowly. To the sky. The clouds were still moving. Still slow. Still peaceful. But now, he could feel it. Something was falling into place. So this is it, he thought. The opening move. Deep inside the seal, Kurama's chakra coiled tighter. Not in fear. Not in rage. But in something much more dangerous. Recognition. Naruto's lips curved. Just slightly. Good, he thought. Let's see how you try to take what's mine. And somewhere, in a space that did not exist, a masked man reached forward and began to tear at the world. Raza's eyes moved from face to face, memorizing expressions, measuring postures, noting who was relaxed and who was pretending to be. The daimyo played their games with words and wealth, but he had not survived the shinobi world by mistaking comfort for safety. He noticed the guards first. There were many, too many. The land of fire had not spared any expense when it came to security. Elite jonin stood near the walls. ANBU masked operatives were hidden among the shadows in the rafters, and barrier specialists were stationed outside the hall. And yet, Raza felt no comfort. This much protection only means one thing, he thought. They're expecting something. The fire daimyo laughed at something the lightning daimyo said, waving his hand dismissively. Come now, we shouldn't let small economic troubles sour such an important gathering. Today is a celebration, after all. The Hokage's sun turning 5 is a symbol of a bright future for all of us. The earth daimyo snorted quietly. Symbols don't feed people. The fire daimyo's smile thinned. Hope feeds stability, and stability feeds prosperity. Raza finally spoke, his voice calm but heavy. Hope also paints targets. The table fell quiet. Several eyes turned toward him. The fire daimyo raised a brow. Kazekage Dano. Surely you're not suggesting that Konoha cannot protect its own guests? I am suggesting, Raza replied evenly, that when too many important people gather in one place, the world has a habit of reminding them how fragile they are. The water daimyo shifted uncomfortably. This is Konoha. If there is one village that can guarantee safety, no village can guarantee anything, Raza cut in. Silence lingered for a moment longer than was comfortable. The fire daimyo cleared his throat. Be that as it may, everything is under control. The fourth Hokage has personally overseen the security. The barrier network is at full power. Raza did not look convinced. His eyes drifted, just for a moment, toward the high windows. Barriers can be bypassed, he thought, if someone knows how. He had learned that lesson the hard way. Outside the hall, Konoha continued its celebration. Music, laughter, movement, and beneath it all, a subtle tension that only shinobi could feel. In another part of the village, Minato stood on a high rooftop, his cloak shifting gently in the wind. His senses were stretched to their limit. Everything was normal, which bothered him more than if something had already gone wrong. The barrier was touched earlier, he thought. Not breached, touched. That meant probing, testing. Someone patient, someone confident. He glanced toward the plaza where Kushina and Naruto were, surrounded by guards. His hand tightened slightly. If you're here, you won't get a second chance. Inside the crowd, Naruto felt it again. A faint misalignment, like the world was being folded somewhere it shouldn't be. Not here, not yet, but soon. He's positioning himself, Naruto realized. Not attacking, setting the board. Kurama's chakra stirred again, heavier this time. Not violent, not panicked, but deeply, instinctively hostile. For the first time, Naruto felt something unusual from the beast. Not rage, Not hunger, but wariness. Interesting, Naruto thought. You've met him before, haven't you? The fox did not answer, but the silence was loud. Back in the hall, a servant leaned in to whisper something to the fire daimyo. His expression changed slightly. The final preparations are complete, the daimyo announced. We will soon proceed to the main ceremony. Raza's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. Final preparations, he thought. For a celebration or for a disaster. Far away, in a place that was not bound by distance, a masked man stood before a swirling distortion of space. Everything was ready. Not yet, he murmured. But soon, he reached out and adjusted one last piece. In Konoha, the sky remained blue. The music kept playing. The guests kept smiling. And no one noticed that the world had already started to tilt. The others straightened. One by one, the daimyo in the room let their disguises fall away. The land of Earth's daimyo's posture changed first. His back straightening, his presence becoming heavier, more grounded. The soft, tired eyes hardened into something sharp and calculating. I suppose there's no point in keeping up appearances anymore, he said, his voice no longer matching the man he had been moments before. The land of water's daimyo followed, his form rippling slightly before settling into that of a tall, pale man with a cold, predatory gaze. It's been a long time, Kazekage, he said quietly. Raza's expression darkened. So that's how it is, he said. This isn't a meeting of daimyo. It's a meeting of kage. I crossed his arms. Not all of them, but enough. Raza's eyes flicked from face to face. The Reikage, the Tsuchikige's representative, and a figure from Kirigakure whose presence alone made the air feel colder. You came into Konoha under false identities, Raza said flatly. That's an act of war. I shook his head. No, it's an act of prevention. Prevention of what? Raza asked. Silence. Then the man from Kirigakure spoke. Of a future where Konoha becomes untouchable. Raza's eyes narrowed. Because of the fourth Hokage? And because of what he's building, the Tsuchikige's representative added. And because of what he's raising. Raza's gaze sharpened. You're talking about the child. I didn't deny it. That boy is already a problem, he said bluntly. 5 years old, and he's being paraded in front of the world like a miracle. You and I both know what that really means. Raza's voice turned cold. Watch your words. I met his gaze without flinching. You've seen him, felt him. Don't pretend you don't understand. Raza was silent. He remembered the pressure, the unnatural stillness of that chakra. Even if he becomes dangerous one day, Raza said slowly, that does not justify treachery. The Kirigakure shinobi smiled thinly. It justifies timing. I stepped forward. Konoha has Minato. Konoha has Kushina. Konoha has the Ninetales. And now it has a child that doesn't behave like a child. He clenched his fist. If we wait 10 years, 20 years, there won't be a balance left to protect. Raza's eyes flicked to the sealed walls. So you came here to kill them, he said. Not openly, I replied. Not as villages. That would start a war no one wants. Then how? Another silence. Then the Tsuchikige's representative spoke quietly. There is a third party. Raza's eyes sharpened instantly. Explain. I hesitated for just a fraction of a second. There is someone who can bypass Konoha's defenses. Someone who can strike at the right moment. And who is this someone? Raza demanded. I looked away. A ghost. The Kirigakure shinobi's smile widened slightly. A man who shouldn't exist anymore. Raza felt a chill. You're dealing with something you don't understand, he said slowly. Maybe, I admitted, but he understands how to kill. Raza's fists clenched. And what do you want from me? He asked. I met his eyes. Nothing. The Tsuchikige's representative continued. But when it happens, we want Sunagakure to stay out of it. Raza stared at them. You want me to be complicit? No, I said. We want you to be uninvolved. Raza was silent for a long moment. Then he said quietly, You're all fools. He turned toward the door. This village is not as blind as you think, he said. And that child is not as helpless as you believe. I frowned. What do you mean? Raza stopped. You'll find out, he said, and walked out. Far above Konoha, space itself began to twist. And somewhere, deep inside the village, Naruto felt it. A sudden, sharp pull in reality. His eyes widened just a fraction. So you finally started, he thought. The discussion did not end with handshakes. It never did among Kage. They argued over borders, supply routes, and temporary occupations that everyone in the room knew would become permanent if left unchecked. Voices rose, then fell. Threats were implied, then wrapped again in diplomacy. Raza listened more than he spoke. He watched. Anoki was driven by old hatred and wounded pride. I was driven by ambition and a desire to break Konoha's shadow. Yagura was the most concerning. There was something hollow in his eyes, something that did not quite match the man's words or posture. He feels wrong, Raza thought. Not weak, not lying, just off. The timing is the most important part, I was saying. If we move too early, Minato will crush everything before it starts. If we move too late, the boy grows into something we can't predict. Anoki snorted. Then we don't move as villages. We let the third party do the dirty work. Raza's eyes narrowed. And if this ghost fails? Yagura answered calmly. Then nothing changes. We deny everything. And we wait for the next opportunity. Raza's fingers curled slightly. So they want to gamble the world. And call it caution. He looked down at the map again. The borders he had drawn were generous. Too generous. On purpose. I noticed. You're asking for a lot. Raza met his gaze evenly. If Konoha falls, there will be chaos. Refugees. Trade disruptions. Power vacuums. Sunagakure will be the first to feel it. Anoki chuckled darkly. Always thinking ahead, Kazekage. Raza did not smile. We're agreed then, I said finally. Raza inclined his head slightly. On one thing, the world will not remain as it is. It was not quite a yes, but they took it as one. The meeting ended soon after. One by one, the Kage left the room through different routes, slipping back into their disguises, their roles, their lies. Raza was the last to go. He paused with his hand on the door. You're all assuming Konoha is blind, he said without turning around. No one answered. Raza's eyes hardened. That's a dangerous assumption. And he left. As he walked the corridors of Konoha, his expression remained calm. But inside, his thoughts were anything but. They're playing with something they don't understand, he thought. Minato is dangerous. Kushina is dangerous. But that child... Raza remembered the pressure, the unnatural density, the feeling that did not belong to a 5-year-old. That child is something else. And then there was Yagura. There is something controlling him, Raza was almost certain. Which meant this third party might not be the only hidden hand in play. Raza's gaze lifted slightly toward the direction of the central plaza. I will not let Sunagakure be dragged into someone else's madness. He made his decision. Elsewhere in Konoha, Minato's head snapped up. His chakra flared for a fraction of a second. There, he muttered. Not an explosion. Not an attack. Just a distortion. Like reality had briefly failed to agree with itself. Barrier team reports began coming in almost immediately. We felt something, Hokage-sama. No breach. But something brushed the outer layer. Minato's eyes darkened. So you're finally here. In the plaza, Naruto froze. For just an instant. Then his eyes widened slightly. There you are, he thought. This time, the disturbance was not subtle. Not distant. It was close. Space itself felt thinner. Kurama's chakra surged once, violent, reflexive, then coiled tight. Not in rage. In hostility. So that's the one you hate, Naruto realized. Interesting. Very interesting. Far above the village. A swirling vortex of space twisted silently. A masked man stepped out of nothingness and into the sky. He looked down at Konoha. Right on schedule, he murmured. And in the heart of the village, surrounded by celebration, music, and false peace, the world took a breath and prepared to scream. For a single heartbeat, the world broke apart. Naruto felt it as a violent tearing sensation, like reality itself had grabbed him and thrown him into a tunnel made of knives and shadows. Space twisted, folded, and then he was gone. Minato reappeared in a flash of yellow light in the center of the hall. Alone. His eyes widened. Kushina. Naruto. The space where they had been was empty. Only distorted air remained. The masked man stood a short distance away, one hand still raised, as if finishing a casual gesture. Damn it! Minato growled. The Kage present exploded into motion. Ice chakra flared like lightning. Inoki lifted off the ground, his body growing lighter. Yagura's presence turned colder, heavier, like something deep and suffocating. Raza did not move immediately. His eyes were locked on the masked man. So you're the ghost they were talking about, Raza said quietly. The masked man tilted his head. Oh? And here I thought I was a secret. Minato's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Who are you? He demanded. The masked man looked at him. For a moment, just a moment, Minato felt something familiar in that gaze. No one you need to remember, the man replied. Just someone here to collect what belongs to him. I cracked his neck. Enough talk. You said you'd handle the Jinchuriki. So handle them. The masked man's single visible eye curved slightly. Oh, I already did. Minato's heart sank. Elsewhere, far from Konoha, Naruto crashed onto cold ground. He rolled instinctively, chakra flaring, and came up in a low stance. The world around him was empty, a barren field, dark stone, an overcast sky, no village, no people, no warmth, only distance. Kushina stumbled a few steps away, barely managing to stay on her feet. Naruto, she cried. I'm here, he said immediately, moving to her side. He reached out, steadying her. His eyes were already scanning the horizon. So this is where he sent us, Naruto thought. Not sealed, not trapped, isolated. Kushina gritted her teeth. He separated us from Minato. Naruto's expression hardened. On purpose. The air shifted. Naruto felt it before he saw it. Space twisted again. The masked man stepped out of nothingness a short distance away. He stood calmly, as if this were a casual meeting. Well, he said lightly, this saves me the trouble of fighting the fourth Hokage again. Kushina's chakra surged violently. You? She hissed. The man looked at her. Yes, me. Naruto's gaze locked onto him. So this is Obito, he thought. The presence was wrong. Not just dangerous. Hollow. Hand over the nine tails, the masked man said. And I might let the kid live. Naruto felt something twist inside his chest. Not fear. Not anger. Something colder. You won't, Naruto said quietly. The masked man paused, then laughed. You're an interesting child. Back in Konoha, the Grand Hall had become a battlefield. Minato was moving. Fast. Too fast for most eyes to follow. He clashed with Ai in a thunderous explosion of speed and power, then vanished again before Inoki's technique could catch him. This isn't a normal enemy, Minato said coldly, reappearing near Raza. He can become intangible. Raza's eyes narrowed. So he can't be hit? He can, Minato replied, but only at specific moments. Yagura's voice echoed through the hall. Then we force him to become solid. The masked man watched them calmly. You can try. He stepped back and vanished. Minato's eyes widened. He's leaving. In the wasteland, the masked man raised his hand. Space began to twist again. Kushina's eyes widened. He's going to move us again. Naruto's mind raced. If he keeps doing this, he'll separate us further. Wear us down. No, that wouldn't happen. Naruto stepped forward, and for the first time, he reached deep, not for Kurama, not yet, but for the structure of the seal. The world shuddered. The masked man froze. What? He muttered. Space stalled, just for a fraction of a second. But that was enough. Kushina felt it. Naruto felt it. And so did the thing inside the seal. Kurama's chakra surged violently. Not in obedience, not in rage, but in recognition. The masked man's eye widened slightly. Interesting, he said slowly. Naruto looked at him. Calm, cold, focused. You're not the only one who can touch space, he said. Far away. Minato felt something. A tug. A familiar chakra signature. Naruto, he whispered, and vanished in a flash of yellow light. The battlefield was set. The board was no longer just moving. It had been flipped. The orange chakra cloak roared to life around Kushina, wild and furious, its heat warping the air around her. The chains tightened. The masked man's body was yanked fully into reality. Tsh! He clicked his tongue. Kushina didn't give him a single second to recover. Her fist crashed into his ribs like a meteor. The impact sent him skidding across the forest floor, tearing through trees before he managed to twist in midair and barely regain his footing. She was already on him. Another punch. Another. Another. Each blow was heavy with the Nine-Tails chakra and her own monstrous strength. You think, boom, you can crash, touch my family, thunder, and walk away? The masked man was forced on the defensive, phasing partially through attacks. But the chains kept dragging him back into solidity again and again, disrupting his timing. Annoying woman, he muttered. He leapt backward, barely avoiding a point-blank blow that shattered the ground where he had been standing. Kushina did not chase blindly. She watched, counted, measured. Now she thought, I've got your rhythm. The chains shot forward again, not aimed at his body, but at the space around him. The masked man's eye widened slightly. You're learning, he said. Too late, Kushina snapped. She pulled. Space itself seemed to snap as his body was forcibly dragged fully into the world again. And that was when she drove her knee into his chest. The masked man was launched into the air. Kushina jumped after him, both hands glowing with violent chakra. I'm not done with you. She slammed him back down to the ground in a crater of broken earth. For a moment, the forest was silent except for the echo of destruction. Kushina stood over him, breathing hard, chains still binding him. Stay, she growled. Then, he laughed. Not loudly, not madly, just amused. You're impressive, he said. Truly. But you're forgetting something. His body phased. just for a fraction of a second. The chains slipped. Kushina's eyes widened. He vanished, reappearing several meters away, already forming hand signs. But you're still on a timer. Kushina felt it. The pain in her stomach. The warmth of blood. The Ninetales chakra was flaring wildly inside her, reacting to the injury and the stress. Damn it, she hissed. The masked man straightened. You should have gone for the kill, he said calmly. Now it's my turn. The ground beneath Kushina shifted. Something moved inside her seal. Not violently, not yet, but restlessly. The masked man raised his hand. Let's take out the biggest problem first. Space twisted. A vortex began to form behind Kushina. Her eyes widened. He's trying to warp me away again. She tried to move. Her body refused. The injury, the chakra strain. Naruto, she whispered. Elsewhere, Naruto felt it. A sudden, violent tug in the world. And something far worse. Kushina is in danger. He didn't think. Didn't hesitate. He reached. Not for Kurama. Not fully. But for the framework around the seal. The world resisted. Then, it bent. The masked man froze mid-technique. What? The vortex faltered. Stuttered. Then destabilized. Someone is interfering? He muttered. Kushina felt the pressure lessen. She looked up, shocked. Naruto. A flash of yellow light exploded into the clearing. Minato appeared between Kushina and the masked man. Instantly, his kunai was already in motion. Get away from my family. The masked man leapt back, barely avoiding the strike. You're always such a nuisance, Fourth. Minato didn't answer. He glanced at Kushina's wound. His eyes darkened. You did this. Kushina forced a grin. Took longer than I'd like, but I caught him. Minato nodded once. Good. Then his chakra spiked. Now I'll finish it. The masked man straightened. This is getting interesting. Far away, Naruto exhaled slowly. The strain faded, but his eyes were cold. So you're serious now, he thought. Good, because so am I. Deep inside the seal, Kurama's chakra coiled. Not in fear, not in rage, but in something far more dangerous. Anticipation.
That's all for now. If you enjoy them, please like, share, and do comment.